An historic day for corporate America as Apple CEO Tim Cook became the highest profile chief executive ever to come out proclaiming in a published essay that he's proud to be gay. So what does this mean for Cook and the company he leads? Josh Lipton has more.
Apple's CEO Tim Cook values his privacy and doesn't typically look to draw attention to himself.
Great to see you.
But today, Cook made a very personal and public decision. In an op-ed, Cook wrote, "While I have never denied my sexuality, I haven't publicly acknowledged it either until now. So let me be clear. I'm proud to be gay, and I consider being gay among the greatest gifts God has given me." Apple's board of directors applauded Cook's statement, a sign of the confidence they have in Cook as chief executive. Others also see the business implication of the first CEO of a Fortune 500 company openly declaring his sexual orientation.
60% of his profits come from outside the U.S. 78 countries around the world, it's still illegal to be gay, and in a third of those countries, punishable by death. So Singapore 2 days ago just reiterated that they were not going to take away their anti-gay law. So now Tim Cook is openly, visibly out. What's Singapore going to say the next time he comes?
It's an open question how the rest of the world does in fact react to Cook's op-ed. Still, whatever the reaction, this was a historic day when the CEO of the world's most valuable company said, publicly and proudly, that he's a gay man. So why make such a statement now? Cook says that he's looking to make a difference. If hearing that the CEO of Apple is gay helps people struggling to come to terms with who they are, then it's worth the trade-off, he says, with his own privacy. Cook's op-ed wasn't a total surprise, though. In fact, just this week, Cook delivered a speech in which he called on his native state of Alabama to do more when it comes to gay rights.
As a state, we took too long to take steps toward equality, and once we began, our progress was too slow. Too slow on equality for African Americans. Too slow on interracial marriage, which was only legalized 14 years ago. And still too slow on equality for the LGBT community.
Cook writes in his op-ed that he'll continue to fight for equality for all people until, he says, his toes point up. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Josh Lipton in Cupertino, California.
Let's turn now to our guests to get their takes on what Tim Cook's personal disclosure will mean for the corporate world. Bill George is a former CEO of Medtronic and professor of management at Harvard Business School, and Kara Swisher is co-executive editor at Recode, a leading tech website. Welcome to you both. Let me begin with you. I spoke early today with Kara, by the way, and I asked her whether this was a kind of Jackie Robinson moment. But I want to pose a different kind of question to you, Bill, and that is, why has it taken so long? Why have CEOs or board members been so hesitant to be open about their sexuality?
I think it's very disappointing. You know, in Minnesota, we had a big same-sex amendment. It was going to constitutionally ban this for all time. And a group of CEOs we organized in Minnesota who were willing to speak out and put their companies on the line, like Ken Powell at General Mills. So I think it's been way too long, Tyler, in our whole society. I mean, actually, the business community in many ways is leading the way ahead of sports.
But how can you say that, Bill, if Mr. Cook is the first of the Fortune 500 or the first of the S&P 500 CEOs to acknowledge his sexuality? How can that be ahead of the game?
Well, I can say to you that Lord John Brown, who I knew well and served on a board with for 5 years, has written a brilliant book called The Glass Closet, and he did hold back, and it made me weep when I read it. But I think more and more the encouragement's there, the acceptance is there, and I think within the business community there's wide acceptance today within the corporate world and benefits for same-sex partners. And so I think we are actually, Tyler, moving ahead. And Tim's a very humble, modest guy, and he's not one to say, look at me. So this is moving to me when he says, you know, this is my brick. We're building this brick by brick. And I actually think the momentum is really there. And when even Pope Francis could call the bishops together and put a statement out, it's moving, and I'm encouraged. My wife Penny and I have been big supporters of trying to have equality for everyone and no discrimination.
Okay, good, Bill. Let me get Kara into this conversation. You know, Kara, in Silicon Valley and in the tech industry, the attitudes toward gay rights, there's much more progressive. But you just heard in the report a comment by one of the people in the story saying that, you know, in other countries, in Singapore was the example he gave, there are a lot of laws against gay rights, and that this will be difficult for Tim Cook to deal with the businesses overseas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not laws against gay rights. It's laws against gays. They're killing them in certain countries. I mean, it's not just getting rights to get married or anything like that. You know, I think he probably put this into the calculation, and it doesn't matter. Someone's got to be a leader, and you know, he took him a while to do it, but he did it. He's now a big leader of this in this issue. He is the most prominent executive in the world, one of them, and he's coming out and saying, "I'm proud of what I am," and you know, I think he's just made the decision that the rest of the world has got to get used to him rather than the other way around.
Kara, what was the reaction in Silicon Valley, a place that you know so well? You know probably more people out there than any single person. What was the reaction today?
It's positive, uniformly positive. I mean, I think nobody, you know, there was some back and forth on Twitter with crazy people, but in general, the people in Silicon Valley have always been very progressive in issues of gay rights compared to most industries. Even though there haven't been out CEOs or out VCs or things like that, there's been a relative, I mean, tolerance around gay issues. And obviously San Francisco, the Bay Area, is one of the areas that has been most tolerant around this country, at least.
Well, let me ask you the same question, Bill. I mean, how does this admission by Tim Cook change the conversation in corporate boardrooms towards gays in management?
I think it's really going to open things up and legitimize the fact there are lots of gays. We all have gays around us all the time, whether they're open or not, and allow people to be themselves. My writing on True North, it's the whole idea you've got to be yourself. And having something like don't ask, don't tell, or hiding who you are is the antithesis of being an authentic leader. So I think it's going to open up corporations in many ways where people haven't felt comfortable. And to recognize we all have differences, and honestly speaking, any form of discrimination, including against people under sexual preference, is legitimizing all forms of discrimination. So I think this is the last major one to fall, and it's moving fast, and I'm excited to see it finally going this way. So we can accept people for who they are.
Kara, does this disclosure by Tim, Mr. Cook, does it open up for LGBT individuals who might otherwise have held back, not gone for the brass ring out of some fear? Does it now make them feel more liberated that they can, in fact, compete in the same way that straight people do?
Well, there's been gay CEOs in history, and there's been gay everything in history. It's just been hidden. I think it just allows you to be yourself. And, like, you know, there's lots of stories of not talking about your spouse or your partner and your colleagues being able to, not being able to reveal yourself totally. Now, the workplace, you don't do a lot of personal stuff, but there is a personal element to the workplace. And I think if people know a little bit more about your life and you become more of a human being, you're a better leader. And you know, it's a lie when you are closeted. It just is. And so anytime you do, you know, when you're in the closet and you're not fully revealing yourself, you're not being as good a leader as you can. And I think probably Cook people at Apple did know about this, his friends did know about this, but this puts a real stake in the ground in terms of the next step is that we all have to talk about it, and it's fine. And I think people below Tim Cook, not at Apple, because I think Apple's a hugely tolerant place, but in other companies can now look up and say, you know, why am I doing this, and what's the cost to me for doing this?
Kara, thanks very much. Bill, one final very quick thought, Bill.
6 years ago, I wrote the first case ever at Harvard Business School. I was shocked there were never any cases about people coming out, about a woman who came out at Verizon. You know, it's interesting that, you know, it encouraged people to be who they were. And we just got to, Tyler, we just got to encourage people in all ways to be who they are. And I think this is just an important step that we're moving in the right direction. Finally, it's too late.
Great conversation. Bill George of Harvard Business School, Kara Swisher at Recode. Thanks a lot.